Hi, my name's Ari Flagle, and I'm fascinated with Boelens pythons. For the last 16 years, I've been traveling to the remote areas of West Papua New Guinea and Papua New Guinea, searching for this elusive snake, to study these animals in the wild, and to gain as much knowledge as we possibly can. So join me and my guests on the Boelens Python Roundtable.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of the Boelens Python Roundtable. I am your host, Ari Flagle, and this is episode 12. Gosh, I've got like these crazy bags under my eyes. I need more sleep. Anyways, I'm excited because I have somebody that I've been wanting to get on for quite some time. Definitely a monumental figure in the Boelens Python world, and I'm not sure if a lot of people even know that, which is a shame because this individual was part of one of the first few that was doing some groundbreaking work with the species when there was not a lot of stuff going on. So without further ado, I am going to bring on Jason Baylin from East Coast Serpents. Awesome. Can you hear me okay?
I can, Ari. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. Thank you for coming on. I know it's been like in the works for a while now, and one of us gets sick, one of the other person gets sick, something, it's always something that happens that, but we are alive and we are well and we are talking about snakes. So that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. You are a formidable name in the reptile industry. Definitely. I know you have a huge passion for pythons, particularly carpet pythons. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're doing a lot, and you've done a lot of work with a lot of carpet python species in the hobby. I know you've done some traveling as well, incorporating carpet pythons as well too, right? You've been to Australia, I'm sure.
Oh, I have not made it to
Australia. What? Oh my God! I thought for sure you've been with the NPR guys on one of the Keith trips.
It's on the bucket list.
Yes. Well, you've got to be on with the Keith and NPR guy. They might actually find a hat big enough for Keith's head in Australia. That is still a challenge that we've been trying. We couldn't find one in Texas, so maybe you could find one in Australia. But yeah, so like I said, you've done a lot of work with carpet pythons. And if you don't mind, give me like a real rundown of some of the stuff you've been working with, so just people can get a baseline for that are not aware of who you are or what you've accomplished and what you're doing.
Oh my gosh, it's been so long. Yes, it started with carpet pythons way back in the day.
What day was that? Before you say way back in the day.
Huh?
What date was that? Because before, when you say way back in the day, we need to.
Back in the 90s.
Good days, the good days.
Without dating myself, yes. But yes, I got my first pair from a friend of mine, and it just snowballed from there. Just trying to create new and great morphs with those animals. At the time, there weren't that many around, and I guess my first real endeavor in selective breeding was the tiger morph, and shortly after that came the jaguar morph, and then myself and Will Leary combined the two, which made some really impressive animals.
Nice.
Back in the day, like I said.
So you've really done.
So it was certainly a journey.
Yes.
It's been something I've been working on. No, go ahead.
So you've really been part in that, responsible for a lot of, variations in color morphs and things like that, in patterns and things that have really been seen nowadays as opposed to the 90s when you were first working with it. So you've been really responsible for a lot of that, right?
I certainly was intimately involved in that. Yes.
Intimately, I like that.
Yeah. So yes, back when we only had a few things to work with, a lot of people were concentrating on localities. Some people were concentrating on color and pattern morphs. I was kind of in the middle, doing both. So it was a really interesting time because, like I said, they weren't super prevalent in the hobby as far as, as compared to, retics, berms, ball pythons, when they were just starting to get popular and well with all the new morphs coming out. So it was very interesting to take a species that wasn't really in the mainstream and help launch it into the hobby where everybody could get their hands on some and really work with a unique animal.
Yeah, talk about a really exciting, time. The 90s obviously were, we had the best music back then. We had the best video games. It was nights of getting, Dr. Thunder, a Little Caesars pizza, and playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles till the morning. Those were the good days.
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, I remember specifically a lot of that that era, because there was, like you said, there was very, very few animals in particular that demonstrated anything of real kind of significance to, hold back to breed to certain things, to maybe hey, this might, do something, this might prove something out, so, that time was very exciting for a lot of people with species, especially for carpet python people as well. It's always interesting to me, when I say carpet python people, because it's how the herpetological world is not divided. I mean, we're not divided. We're all united with our love of what we do. But you've got groups you've got chondro people, carpet python people, and all that. So
all the different niches.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of niches and all that. And it's interesting because a lot of those early time keepers working with stuff, like we were saying, there was nothing really there to really differentiate anything new at that time. Where now there's so many different beautiful color morphs and patterns that are starting to be present, and a lot of new snakes that are coming out, with a lot of people, like you said, a lot of influence, from where you came from with what you were doing back then, to really kind of see some of that fruition come to, taking place now for people to see it, with all that early hard work and all that stuff of, it's just, it's great. I mean, that's why we do it. That's the thing.
I mean, those building blocks from way back then, to see where it started from with somebody's inkling, that this might produce that, or that might produce this.
Yeah.
To see where it started from with all those guys back on MoreliaPythons.com.
Yeah.
Where it is now, and all the different podcasts, all the different information that's being disseminated out there that everyone now has access to. Where back in the day, we had one spot where we were talking about this, and that was it. And it was some of the best back and forths. It was some of the best information exchange, because I think it was just because it was so, for lack of a better term, isolated to that particular spot. And it just became a wealth of information for people to go find and figure out, what they're doing with their collections, which path they're going to go down. And then when new things would pop up, it was just, everybody got to see it right then and there. So it was a very exciting time.
Definitely. I remember that website. I remember that website, and I'll use it intimately.
Yeah.
Because I would go on that site a couple times a day, and everybody that was anybody or had that passion would do the same. I mean, we'd wait to find out the next comment, oh, okay, what is it? Oh, that question being answered, or, oh, does somebody have a photo? And, AI wasn't in the scene then, so it was legit, or a really bad Photoshop.
I mean, and it was real. And I really don't know what happened to this, but it was real discussions.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it wasn't. It's not the way it is now, where it's just batting stuff back and forth. Some of the nonsense that goes on in Facebook and Instagram, and it was pure discussion.
Yeah.
With an animal that everybody was passionate about at the time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of it is, and I see it nowadays too with the new generation. And I mean, not everybody, but it's you've got that, you can hide behind the keyboard kind of thing nowadays, and you can say essentially whatever you want, but back then when we were all on those forums, like, it was our life and our livelihood, because that was the name and the reputation we were developing then. So it was like,
absolutely,
you type something and, it's like, okay, they might not know who I look like, but I'm going to run into this person at a reptile show, and it's like, I've got to be able to be, play in that world, as and be able to interact person to person. And I see a lot of that nowadays being completely disregarded. And it was a purer time, I would say.
It was. And like you said, those forums, became a community, and what you posted was your word.
Yeah.
And, and that's how people developed their reputations. That's how people developed, their, position in the hobby. And, it was a purer time.
Yeah. Yeah.
To do that.
I miss it so much.
Not to say that what goes on now isn't, as informative, but the information is just scattered all over the place. Yeah. It was just nice to have one central hub for that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I actually went back to see if the site was up and everything, to see if I could find old transcripts and all that stuff, because it was such a great platform.
It was.
And I mean, it just was like, anybody and everybody, even if you weren't posting, you were on it. And like I said, I mean, I was in art school during the time, and I'd have my break in between classes, and this is going to date me. We didn't have access to internet on our cell phones then. I remember getting a Nokia that was like this brick. So like there was a computer down in the staff area or whatever, and we could sneak in there every once in a while. So I jump on it in between classes and get on that forum to see, what the next post was, or if somebody saw the picture I posted, or things like that. And that's how we lived, with that. But nowadays I feel like there's so much, like you said, there's so much information that's all over the place, that is the presence of, or the present of like what's acceptable. There was no structure organized, anybody and everybody could put whatever they want now. But back then, you put it out and it would be checked. Like, that would be the thing. It's like, okay, these people have been working with this, you're bullshitting, but nowadays it's like, oh, well, I typed in Google and Google told me this, or, oh, I talked to this person that's, doing this, and it would contradict so much. I do miss it a lot. It was just such an exciting time.
I do too. It really was like sort of an informal peer review.
Yeah.
On everything that you put out there, because whatever you put on that forum was automatically checked by people, who knew what they were doing, and if it wasn't legit, you were going to get called out on it.
Yeah, and you better have a good, a good answer.
Yes, absolutely, because you would get flamed, and you weren't getting flamed just to get flamed, like sometimes that happens today.
Yeah,
just because everybody's got this opposition defiance disorder mentality, but back then you were getting reviewed by people in your community who knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And you had to post,
true. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's
information.
I often wonder, like, if there's ever a way for us to go back to that simplicity, that structure nowadays, but I don't know if it's ever possible, because just how,
it's just so many places you can do.
Yeah. And I even went back to like King Snake forum the other day too, because I was pulling up a lot of old data, and so just to see what was there. And the great thing about how King Snake is back up is, in my personal opinion, and that doesn't mean anything. I mean, it'll never be what it was back then, but it's still there, that you can kind of go back and see how the conversations were, how topics were addressed, and how topics were discussed. For the most part, professionally, I mean, obviously you've got people that, go in there, they don't know what they're talking about, but it had structure to it. It had that, it was just a different time,
It absolutely did. And it's sort of, unfortunate that we got away from that. because it was like a pure form of conversation and information. But unfortunately, the world has gone in too many different directions, I think. But the good thing is the information is still out there if you can find it. You just have to be a discerning researcher doing it.
Yeah, and that's tough. So it's tough nowadays too, I think, for some of this new herpetoculture or keepers and whatnot. It's like, we have the internet at our fingertips, which is incredible. It's like, but it's like, people like you and myself and many other people in our era, our generation, it's like we came from discussing things like on a forum basis, and like what you were saying, like, you post something, if it's not true, you're going to get burned on it quick, where nowadays it's like we have excuse me, we have access, at our fingertips for whatever we want. It's like, back then, if somebody asked you a question about something and you didn't know, you wouldn't respond. But nowadays you can type in whatever you want because, you found it on Google or something. So it's
exactly.
It's wild. It's crazy just to see how things evolve and things change, but I do see, I do see a lot of positivity and benefit nowadays because I'm seeing, a lot of really new, fresh minds on a lot of new people that are in the hobby now, where they're kind of, they're taking that historical, reference that people like yourself have created, as building blocks, and they're running with new ideas in different directions that are beneficial and that are doing things that at the time we weren't considering, if that makes sense. And I see it's exciting, especially with a lot of really difficult species that we're working with. And I mean, nowadays, it's 2026, which is crazy to think, like, we've unlocked so many, secrets of so many different, species we've been keeping in captivity, where we're being, reproduction is being, now more common seen in certain things, or, just being able to acclimate certain things better nowadays. We're seeing this, and I see a lot of it from a new generation of herpers coming in that they're trying things different. I think it's a lot. It's really exciting, and that's just how everything evolves. We just get to reminisce on the good old days of like all that cool stuff, and I miss it a lot. But
and I do see sort of a trend, I guess, and I hope it's not just a trend, but we seem to be headed back towards sort of more of a information-based, tight-knit community that with more, for lack of a better term, positive, outcomes and interactions. I like seeing that. And like you said, the new keepers are great.
Yeah,
they're building on the information that they received from all of us back in the day and taking it to the next level, each time. So, and I think that's just the way things evolve naturally. But to have those building blocks that were there back in the day, I think it's still essential.
Yeah.
For
I agree.
As keepers, hobbyists, and to have the discussions, to get that information back out there, that may have been sort of undercover for years now, and to have it put back out in the mainstream, I think is important.
Yeah, and with you saying that, I completely agree. I remember, being much younger, I'd say like in my early 20s, and going to these, I would go to every symposium, every expo I possibly could go, that my parents would drive me to, or I could drive when I started driving and all that stuff, and fly to and everything. And, trying to interact, one-on-one with individuals. And I think that's a huge learning curve for a lot of people to be able to talk to a person to person, because you gain so much more insight on the topic or the scenario or whatnot when you interact with a person, because, you know, as opposed to typing or reading a message, because you can't, you know, emotion isn't conveyed. Certain things are not easily, you know, understood from just a message. So I remember going to these places and talking to these people, and, you know, being you know, a little fish in this big pond, you know, with all these great old schoolers, you know, it was just, you know, so awe-inspiring, but also like listening to, you know, scenarios, the hard times, you know, working with things, you know, problems, successes, and things like that too, on a one-to-one level, was so much more, you know, positive for me than, you know, just, you know, reading things on the forum and stuff like that, and everything. And it all kind of encompassed itself, which was great. And I think, you know, nowadays there's like, you know, I see all these great, you know, expos, events, and all this stuff. And I'm always encouraging younger keepers and stuff to go to these events and, you know, seek out, you know, people that, you know, they really look up to, or they really, you know, value the work they're doing, particularly for species that they're interested in, or just in a whole. And, you know, and really talk to these people and get this information. And where I was going with this little spiel I just started was, there's a lot of things too that we lose in the translation over time. And a perfect example was when I was speaking to Paul Miles, and you know, he was going back in his mind, and he's an older guy now, which is still very sharp, obviously very sharp, and a great guy. It was just a real privilege to speak with him, and thank you for helping me with that. Tracking him down.
Fantastic.
Yes, just a really, really nice guy. And there were things that he was trying to remember back that he seemed to kind of just misplace for that moment, and then we'd be talking, and then it would pop back into his head, and I would write it down really quick, and I'm like, oh, you didn't tell me about that before. He's like, oh, I just remembered that, you know, or something like that. I'm like, there you go, that's perfect. Those are things that, you know, we want to put down in things like our, you know, tools that we have, like podcasts and forums like that will be around forever, for people to go back over and re-review, because there's little bits of information that can be critical in just our husbandry and acclimation and reproductive stages, you know, that we could potentially lose by not talking to some of these, you know, incredible influential people of our herp history.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's interesting. You mentioned reptile expos and talking to the people that you've always either seen online or messaged with back and forth. But talking to them, you get a completely different perspective on who they are, what they do. Funny story. This was a couple Tinleys ago, I guess. Someone said to somebody, you know, they were, you know, talking to me, and they said, well, you know, Jason Baylin's not a very good salesman. And I thought about that for a second. And when you were just saying, and talking to people at tables and getting information from people, and I thought to myself, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm okay with not, you know, trying to, you know, peddle my wares in such a way that I come across as a used car salesman. I would rather sit and talk with you about the animal, the history, how it was produced, you know, what I think about it, what you think about it. That's, to me, you know, where I get my kind of satisfaction with being at shows and talking to people. That's what I like doing.
Yeah.
You know, I will sit and talk to you, you know, about the animal forever. If you're looking to buy something, fantastic. That's great. You know, I want people to have these animals, but at the same time, I'm not going to, like, you know, talk to you about financing and you know, how many years you're going to finance a snake for. You know, it's
yeah,
not.
right, yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I'm okay with not being a great salesman, but I do hope that I come across it in such a way where I'm imparting whatever information I might have, you know, locked in my brain somewhere, you know, to somebody who can use that information and take whatever they're looking to do to the next level. And that's the more important part than trying to, sell as many snakes as you can at an expo.
And I agree with that. I'm the same. Like I work with my strong suits. Like I'm not a good businessman, and I admit that, and I'm fine with that. That's just not my strong suit,
Great.
But I can send you over to the financial department if you'd like to consider,
Yeah,
well, that's what it is. But it's like, I go to these shows also for the same thing. Obviously, we try to make a living with doing a passion that we have. If you're selling snakes to be your living and that's understandable. You've got to make sales to be able to continue doing what we do. But, I go to these shows, just to meet people face to face. And like you said, meeting these people, you can gain so much of who they are personally, having a conversation, because you can pick a bullshit artist out when you talk to them right off the bat, but it's very difficult to do it when you're online because they have access to fill in all the right answers when they need it. So
it's very true.
Yeah. So it's like, going to these shows is great because it offers the opportunity for people to meet role models and people they're looking up to and all this and that. And, and discuss our passions about what we're doing, where we want to see ourselves, in things, how to, all this and that and yada, yada. But it's like, like you said, it's I'm not a good businessman. I don't know. I just like talking to people about reptiles and animals.
You got into it for a reason because it was fun. You loved the animals. You started working with the animals, breeding the animals, producing cool stuff. And, if you do that, and if you do it responsibly and you make a good name for yourself, the sales will come. And, I just never really wanted to sit at a podium trying to, like I said, peddle my wares in such a way that, I come across as just a salesman. Yeah. Because that's never what it was for me. It's not who I'm about. And I would rather sit and talk with you about the animal.
Yeah. And it'll come back. I mean, it'll come back to bite you too. Be like, man, that Jason guy, he was really pushing that snake on me. Oh, that Ari guy, he was really trying to sell me that book or something. It's like, man, it's like, it'll come back,
It will. 100%.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So now that we've cleared all that up, we've talked about the 90s, we've talked about business, whatever. For a lot of people, like I said, when I use the term old schoolers, I'm not using that in a negative way by any means. It is probably one of the greatest terms I could give somebody. And you are an old schooler. And not a lot of people know, but you were a part of the first, I think it was the 1, 2, 3. You were the third person to successfully reproduce Boelens pythons in captivity. Third or fourth? Yes. I think it was. Yeah, I'm right. 2001.
It was. I think it was the second purely captive, born and bred.
Yes.
Boelens.
And not. And
David
there's
Tracy hatched them.
Yes. Yeah. So your animals came from the gravid female that started it all for everybody.
Yes.
And not a lot of younger herpetologists, or not a lot of people for that matter, know that. And I think that is a damn shame, because the achievement that signified, let alone now, but back then in the early 2000s, was monumental. So with that being said, tell me about how you first became interested in Boelens pythons.
Again, that's digging deep into the archives. I saw them on either online or in Reptiles magazine, and just started researching them. Just the appearance alone was enough just to set your brain on fire. They're just one of the most unique pythons in the world. Yeah. And it just, I just couldn't get out of my head. And then you go from, okay, I really like this animal. How on earth am I going to get my hands on one, let alone two?
Yeah.
So that's what started it. It was just, seeing them online in a magazine at the time. It just, that's what starts the fire. And then you just have to start, figuring out how you're going to go about getting them, what the logistics, the financial end of it. Do you want to share it with somebody? I mean, sometimes having a partner helps. Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. But you just go through all the different, steps, and you I call it reptile ADHD. You're going in 15 different directions at the same time. Yeah. But for me, I think, I was at that stage where I was trying to just grab everything. I could grab this and breed it. I'll grab that and breed it. I wasn't concentrating on any one thing specifically at that time. Yeah. So I think that's what started it, and then it went from there, going down the rabbit hole after that, just trying to figure out the best way to go ahead and get it.
Yes, I can understand that completely. In your animals, so the pair of animals that you were able to acquire came from that first capped hatched clutch from the Barkers? No,
it did not. So the first, I had a friend, his name is Frank Memo, and we started collaborating, and I found an importer.
Okay.
By the name of Duncan McCrae.
Of course, Duncan.
Yes. And, and it took some time to sort of coordinate, agree on terms, and then take that sort of leap of faith at the time, because if it didn't work out, there was no recourse. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was just that it was still sort of the wild, wild west when it came to getting animals from overseas. So we brought in a pair. Brought it in through Dulles International Airport, and we got fined because we used the wrong airport. Apparently, the Fish and Wildlife guy, was all upset that he had to drive an extra 45 minutes to come to that particular airport, and so he was cranky when he got there.
Oh, he got paid overtime, whatever.
Oh, well, yeah, I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
So we got the animals in, we got them established, got them, caged, feeding, checked, the whole nine, back.
And these were little guys when you got them, right?
No, they were adults.
Oh, they were adults? Okay.
They were adults. So we had the pair. The female, come to find out, had a parasite, lungworms. We were working with a vet by the name of Scott Stahl in Virginia. Yep. And he said, you're kind of screwed, because there's just no way, there's nothing that they, medicine wise, that can get rid of those things. In the wild, they live with them. And, but with the added stress of captivity, the lungworms multiplied. So we lost that female.
Okay.
Another old schooler in the hobby at the time by the name of Pete Call.
Yep.
Had a female. He did not have a male. He had the female sitting in his office in a Rubbermaid tub, no heat, and just hanging out in his office for, however many weeks, up, maybe it was a little over a month, and she was just sitting there.
Yeah.
He said, take her, see what you guys can do. So I brought her back to my place, set her up, and again, this will be dating myself, but I put her in a big old 6-foot square Neodesha with the overhead 250 watt infrared bulb.
Yeah.
And got her all and continued a modified cool down, because she'd already been cooled for quite some time, just sitting in her box. Yeah. And then we introduced the male that we had, and they copulated instantly. The male Boelens pythons, if anyone doesn't know, will breed a light socket if you offer it to them.
Yeah, they love breeding.
Yeah, so that was the origin of the original animals that we worked with.
Okay, cool. Now let me before you go any further with it, I want on when you brought your animals in from Duncan, what was your acclimation process like with the adults when you got them? Because, you know, nowadays, you know, it's very much frowned upon bringing in adults, let alone if you're legally able to bring them in to begin with.
Right.
I mean, because we have access to bringing in all these babies, which just acclimate so much easier and so much better in captivity. So I'm very interested. I think a lot of people would be interested too to hear as far as like what you guys did with your adult animals, and what led you to discover that your female had the lungworms.
Well, I think, you know, again, thinking back, we got them all. We set them up just like you would set up any other python. Okay. Again, our knowledge at the time was very little, other than, you know, what we had read and you know what we could ascertain from people. Talking to Duncan actually was a great resource at the time, and you
Duncan's
know,
a great guy.
So, but basically, we got them in their cage, and we left them alone.
Wow, that's a novel idea.
Right? We left them
Wow.
alone. And just let them acclimate themselves. We provided the best, you know, lighting, heat, the whole, you know, what you would normally do for any other python species. We gave them what we could with what we had, and we just let them acclimate themselves.
Wow. Okay, so I have to stop you right there. That was so fucking refreshing to hear, Jason. Leaving them alone and letting them acclimate, do what they do. That is such a nice thing to hear nowadays, because so many people will constantly fuck with their animals and they will stress them the hell out instead of letting them just get comfortable and let the animals talk to us to let us know what we need to give them.
I legit probably didn't go down there for more than, you know, a few minutes at a time.
Yeah.
For over a week. So there was no, you know, and nothing to stress them out, distract them from doing what they would normally do. And from what I could observe, they were completely content to get into their hide box and just hide out.
Yeah.
And I would see them thermoregulate. They would go back and forth, but for the most part, they just went into their normal routine, wild behavior, which is seclusion.
Yeah.
So I think it was about 2 weeks before we even attempted to feed them. Because feeding in and of itself can be stressful for the animals. It's an expenditure. It's an expenditure of energy. They have to go grab, catch, digest. So all that in and of itself can be stressful to them. So again, we fed. It took a while before we offered food, and just let them be. And they were acclimating beautifully.
Wonderful. Oh, that makes me so happy to hear that.
So well, and then you asked the lungworms. We came to find out. We didn't know she had. Oh, I'm sorry. I take it back. She coughed up along these. They looked like almost looked like beetle larvae, if that makes sense. And we sent them to stall. He said, "Yeah, she's got them. There's not much you can do. Either she can regulate them internally to where she can live with them, or she doesn't, and she didn't."
Yeah.
So that's what happened. Yeah.
And that's one of the obviously the downsides of bringing in, larger animals, obviously, because they have that exposure, obviously, because they're older. So they're living in the wild. They're feeding off of natural things, and a lot of things that they're feeding off of in the wild harbor a lot of these internal parasites and stuff like that. So, So, and, it's one of the better, obviously, now that we have, like I said, we have access to babies and stuff like that at work, it eliminates that whole issue. And, I know historically, like, the success rate of adult Boelens that would come in was like almost 90% fatal. Like, you'd very rarely get anything to live long term, let alone attempt to do any kind of reproduction. And even if you got reproduction, I mean, like you said, Boelens males will breed a light socket. You know, they're going to be half dead. They're still interested in breeding. I mean,
They are.
If I'm dying, I want to have sex. You know, it's like,
exactly.
why not, right? Like, so, but no, that's really refreshing to hear. I feel like that statement that you made about just leaving them alone and letting them relax and acclimate on their own is such an overlooked thing with a lot of keepers, not just new keepers, but also old school keepers too will do it too. And it is, and I think it's just like one of the main reasons why you will have deaths and health related issues because of that. Because like you said, you've got an animal. First off, it's being pulled out of the wild. It's being sent to the supplier. Then from the supplier, it goes to the exporter. From the exporter, it goes to this person that's orchestrating the shipment. You know, it's changing hands multiple times. There's so much stress, you know, lack of hydration. Organs are starting to go down, things like that. And it's like you get them home. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to feed it right away. It's like, oh, wait, put the brakes on. You know, it's like, I like, for example, I have, you know, I don't have a big collection nowadays just because I focus so much on Boelens, but I do like tree vipers, and I just brought in a really rare pair or trio of tree vipers from Sumatra, and I literally have seen them maybe no more than 10 minutes in the week I've had them. I just kind of look in there to peek, make sure the water's full, and then I'm out. I'm like, I'm leaving them alone. I'm not even trying to feed. You know, people. I don't think people realize how to let their animals show them what they want, you know, and that's a skill that needs to be, you know, re-ingrained in a lot of people's minds.
I agree. I mean, it's just, even with captive bred babies of any species that you're selling at shows.
Yeah.
When I said, give them 3 days to a week before you even do anything with them, let them acclimate to their new space. And I'll get a message that night. Oh, I got him home and I fed him. I was like, oh dear.
Yeah.
So I mean, these animals are set up not to feed every day. Obviously.
Yeah.
They can go some time without being fed, and I think that is the time that these animals sort of like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, readjust themselves.
Yeah.
When they're changing hands, they need that time to explore their new space, find where their comfort areas are, and then start to de-stress. And it's impossible to get an animal to thrive if you're constantly fucking with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop fucking with them. Let them be for a good period of time. I don't even handle new animals other than to clean cages. You know, if I'm feeding at that point, I'll feed them, but I don't mess with them, you know, for the longest time, because I just want them to relax. Yeah.
Well said. I mean, I think that's like the key in, you know, successful husbandry is, like you said, like letting the animals relax, you know, get used to everything, you know, take a shit over here, do a urate over there, get familiar smells, you know, just know the eating, all the innards and outs of their enclosure routine. You know, it's so stressful, like you said, in that moment of feeding an animal too. You know, it's like, you know, because, you know, obviously they're more susceptible, they're exposed because they're focusing all their energy on consuming something, you know, swallowing it down. It's switched that brain mentality to, instead of just being in my environment or being observant of what's going on, now they're in a feeding mode. So it's completely different. So it's like, you know, there's so many different factors that we as keepers overlook, you know, and the simplicity is usually what it is. It's you know, something like you said, it's like, oh, I took the animal home and I tried to feed it and it wouldn't feed. And it's like, I told you to leave it alone for at least a week. You know, it's like, what's the benefit of you taking it home and feeding it 2 days after? You know, nothing.
If you really think about the feeding aspect, because everybody wants their animal to eat,
of course,
because that's how you tell whether they're thriving.
Yeah.
But I think what some people fail to realize, when animals in the wild eat, like you said, they're exposed, they're out hunting, they're trying to find food. And what do as soon as they get a meal? They beat feet back to wherever they feel comfortable, wherever they're safe, and then they just chill.
Yeah.
But it's that, so I think people don't realize feeding is stressful for them. That there's so many different components to feeding animals.
Yeah.
To get them back to where they can de-stress, digest, and then obviously metabolize their meals. So
yeah.
But the process therein, especially in the wild, and if you're working with wild caught animals, they have that mentality. They've got to find it, kill it, swallow it, and get back to safety.
Yeah.
Those are the components that animal is working off of. And in captivity, they're not sure. They don't know what safety is. They don't know whether you're going to come in and start messing with them, pull their hide box off, check to see what they're doing. Yeah. That's all stressful.
Put the camera in their face for a YouTube reel,
Right. Exactly. So, I think that concept has sort of fallen by the wayside with the, feed, grow, breed, produce eggs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, feeding, it's, people enjoy it. It's like, oh, it's great. It's, it will, like you said, it's the animal. It's thriving. That's what we want. We want an animal to feed,
It's cathartic for us.
Yeah.
It's cathartic because we know, okay, that relieves our stress.
Yeah.
So, but not there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also too, like, I know a lot of people like, and even seasoned herpetoculturists for that matter, like, feeding frequency is such a debatable thing. Like I feed my Boelens 3 times a month and they're perfectly content. They're perfectly content. When they start cruising around with that look that we all as snake keepers know, the look, it's like, okay, I'll feed you. But, so many people are like, oh, I have got to feed it every 4th day, every 5th day. It's got to be exactly like this. In the wild, these animals, not just Boeleni, but, snakes are opportunistic feeders, whether they're going to be an ambush predator waiting for something for weeks or even maybe a month to walk by to eat, as opposed to something that's going to be a more induced like cruising species, like, some of these colubrids or even other python species, and they come across something. There's no set schedule. It's feeding time. It's like, these are not, it's just like, we come across something. It's okay. I'll take the opportunity and feed it, but we don't know how long that can be. Dietary analysis and wild feeding study is a very overlooked area. I think it's super fascinating because, we could probably gain so much unseen knowledge of behavior, let alone natural behavior from animals, being able to see frequency of feeding in the wild and all that stuff too. But, in captivity, it's like, you don't have to be shoving food down its mouth every 4 days. It'll be fine,
The female Boelens that we got from Pete was also, a wild caught animal. And, not a super long-term captive. So the weight on that animal would probably, if somebody was looking at it, would say this animal really needs to be fed up before anything. But that it was a natural weight for that animal. Yeah. So many times I see people feeding their animals, and I'm sure you can't do that with Boelens. You can't shove food down them every 4 days. They will die.
Yeah.
They do metabolize. I did notice they metabolize their food pretty quickly. Yeah. But you don't need to. So you see these big, chunky, round animals. And
they're out there. They're out there.
But I can tell you just from my experience with this particular species, the female that we used that did wind up producing eggs was not a chunky animal.
Good.
It was lean. It was healthy looking, but it by no means was it like overfed by any stretch.
It wasn't a Burmese python or a retic. It's not that. Boeleni are not that body type. I don't understand it because I think what it is I think it's the word python, and automatically people assume that it's a python, so it's a big snake, so it has to eat a lot of stuff and it has to eat really big things. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, they feed off of animals that are abundant in the area that are not giant prey items. In the frequency of being able to encounter an animal like that too in such a unique environment or specialized environment, who knows? It could be months before they, and it's, I think I see, particularly with Boelens in captivity, I see either really, really underfed animals, or I see animals that look like they should be on like, what was it? The Jenny Craig thing where they're just like this little pea head and they've got like neck folds or something like that, and you're not going to get anything good from that, anything.
And just an assumption, but animals like Boelens where there are, and you've obviously seen them.
I've seen it a couple times.
Yes. But they're eating prey that's also wild. That prey is not high in fat.
Yeah.
It's not, they're eating lean prey items.
Yeah.
And we don't necessarily have that. Most people don't have that at their disposal in their facilities to feed those. So we're feeding what we have available to us. And I think we have to realize that the fat content that we're giving these animals is not what they're getting in the wild. So 100%. We don't have to feed them as often because we are giving them more than what they would normally get per prey item.
Yeah. And like you kind of touched on a little bit earlier about how they metabolize much faster, and the factor behind that most likely is because, the diet that they're feeding off of in the wild, is not consuming large fat, intake. They're, couscous is, one of the predominant diet items that these snakes are feeding off in the wild. And the frequency of that, I have zero idea. But a couscous feeds mostly off of vegetation. They eat certain plants, certain leaves, maybe some kind of fruit. They're not eating things in there like, heavy fat and protein-rich items. So they're able to absorb, the bones obviously are able to absorb everything beneficial from that animal that animal's eating.
Correct.
And then metabolizing it quick. And I'm going to go into, I just have to figure out how I'm going to do it for one of the episodes because I really want to go into a diet-based episode where we're comparing, captive diets versus wild diets. And I really want to look into some rodent breeders as well as people that are raising birds and things like that and kind of look into that as much because I think it would be a really interesting topic to discuss because obviously we want to be feeding and providing our animals the best we possibly can, and that entails, our sources for our food items for our snakes or lizards, and, a lot of times when you're breeding, a lot of the, and I'm not trying to harp on any of these commercial breeders at any means whatsoever, but, obviously when you're producing tens of thousands of rodents, it's very expensive. So you're looking for, cost-effective methods to be able to maintain large colonies where your production is still good, but you're not breaking the bank. Like I don't honestly think rodent breeders could afford, $200 bag of different kind of food because it's like homeopathic or whatever, or, free range or whatever, as opposed to something that's going to be more, more affordable. And it's going to go longer term, but the long term of the animal is going to be not as healthy, So I think it'd be an interesting thing to discuss. But so you said your female, the female you got from Pete, she was originally a wild animal as well. Do you remember how long she was in captivity for with him before you guys got her? Or
it was, I would say, less than 6 to 8 months.
Okay, so she was a recent animal then.
Yeah, she was a recent animal, and she obviously she hadn't been with a male since Pete had her. So we were fairly confident that when we paired her up, it would be the only introduction she had in that time period that would allow insemination and to be able for her to produce eggs. So she was probably here less than a year.
Okay. And what was her, if you were to guess, like what would you put her age at or her size?
And it's hard to determine with a wild caught animal because you're not going to get the same size to age ratio that you're used to seeing in a captive born animal that's being fed on a regular basis. My guess is she was 5 to 6 years old based on her size. Being coming from the wild.
And like her length, would you say she was probably around 8 feet, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more?
Yeah. 7 to 8 feet. Yeah.
About around 8 feet. Now, when you guys got her, did you go right into a breeding scenario with her, or did you keep her for a while before you attempted doing anything?
Well, the time of the year sort of dictated that for us. So it was winter time.
Okay.
Fall into winter when we got her. So like I said, she had been sitting on his floor for a good month or so, just ruminating.
Nice.
So we had him for a couple weeks, just to let them sort of again acclimate the way we discussed earlier, and then we just started. It was time to introduce the male because, it was honestly it was sooner than we wanted to.
Yeah.
Just due to the fact that we just got her, but she had been here for a while, so she had her time to acclimate. So within probably 2 to 3 weeks, I think we introduced the male.
Okay.
And they locked up immediately. It was it was within the hour they locked up.
So they were so it was November, you said? Did you say it or no? Or
I think it was November into December.
Okay. November, December. That correlates with what we see.
What our weather patterns are.
Was there anything interesting with the introductions and the behavior that kind of like stuck out to you when you started?
The only thing that I remember is that both animals were completely receptive of each other immediately. There was no, she didn't freak out when I put the male in.
Yeah.
She was completely fine. And he went to her immediately. The one thing I did notice that, like I said, they copulated within the hour. And after they stopped, she went back into her box.
Okay.
And he then followed.
Was there any guarding on her end? Was there any guarding from him by her, or guarding from him to her?
If I remember correctly, he sat on top of the box for a while because her box had it on top entrance, so she had to go up to the top of the box and go down. So yes, I think he did. Again, if memory serves, he sat on top of the box for a while.
Okay, yeah.
But there were just multiple copulations over the next days, weeks.
Okay.
So
at what point did you feel comfortable that, or felt like that it was time to pull him out, or did you pull him out?
I left him in there for a good long time.
Okay.
I honestly wanted to make sure that I knew they were breeding, obviously, but the timing, you wanted to make sure that the timing was right to where you were catching her in her cycle, and everything was, I know she can store the sperm and she can introduce it whenever she's ready, but I just wanted to make sure that she was topped off.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So once you felt comfortable, then you separated the pair, correct, and let her kind of do her thing.
Yes.
Did you start noticing? At what point did you start noticing any kind of subtle behavioral changes? Because obviously you had been breeding other species at that time, so you knew what to look for.
Yeah.
When did you start noticing stuff?
So I can't tell you for sure that I caught ovulation. Mm-hmm. Like I said, she spent a lot of time in the box. What I did notice, she spent less time under the heat and more time in the box. And when I would go and again, they're wild caught animals. You didn't want to disturb them too much. We were doing a lot of this stuff just based off of finger crossing and faith. And but when I would look at her when she was in her tub, I did notice a thickening, just a general overall thickening of just her general appearance. Like I said, I can't tell you that I caught ovulation.
Yeah,
I wish I could have documented that, but I did not.
Yeah. Did you continue feeding offering food during during the cycle at all or anything? Or
oh God, I can't remember.
That's always an interesting thing.
I don't think at that point we were really offering food because of the time of the year that it was. And she had been brumated at Pete's house. So in my mind, it was probably not feeding season, basically.
Yeah, it wasn't a priority at that time. You're just kind of letting her do her thing. Yeah. And I think it's interesting you say that too, because like, I wonder, I mean, obviously the animals know what's best. They know what's going on. They know if they're, they know the season. Obviously a male comes in to the scene, they're breeding, so they know it's a breeding event, and I wonder a lot of times, in captivity, obviously, if that reproductive cycle could potentially be interrupted by the introduction of food during that time.
I think subconsciously or consciously, I don't know that we considered that. But I think what our whole basis with this whole project was leave them alone.
Yeah.
Let them do what they're going to do. So we didn't, I think, so feeding wasn't really, the main priority for us at the time, just based on when we got her.
Yeah. 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 She had already been, she would be already in the wild. She'd be in her season. She'd be, expecting to breed. Food priority wasn't at the utmost point on a priority of everything. So, but that's interesting because, like I said, like now that I'm thinking, I wonder if, we would see more success. I don't know. And this is just me speaking, just off the top of my head right now. Like if people, like you said, like, that female had been essentially brumating or cooling for a cycle over with Pete prior. And then you guys just kind of continued that cycle over.
And I think that's what we were trying. We weren't trying to interrupt anything. We were trying to continue it as best we could.
And one thing also too that pops out in my head as well that probably played a critical factor that helped out, and this is just me throwing ideas out because it's what I do, is, she hadn't been exposed to a male for so long. This is a new foreign smell. It's a new male. That might have really kind of supercharged the situation by bringing somebody from another, like it's like the pool boy, he's over there, kind of scenario. And that could have helped out as well. And then just with you guys continuing the cycle by not introducing food into that scenario, she's like, okay, well, it's time to breed. I'm just going to let this go. Nobody's messing with me, taking me out and all the time. And, interrupting what I'm doing, and she just kind of went the full term. Did she do the typical like pre-lay shed for you guys and everything, or?
So we thought, yes, she did, but there was a shed in between that we got very excited about.
Okay.
That wasn't the pre-egg laying shed. It was probably the post-ovulation shed, of which I did not catch. So, yes, she did do a pre-egg laying shed, but it wasn't the one that I thought it was. Okay. So, but, obviously come to find out that's the second one was that shed, that pre-egg laying shed. So
now when, so after that shed, that pre-lay shed, did you guys, I mean, obviously you guys were very hands-off, which I completely respect. And I really enjoy hearing that during that cycle, especially. Did you notice any kind of twitching or any kind of typical grab behavior that you would expect to see with any other species you guys had been working with prior that led you up to that point saying, oh, I think we got it?
I wouldn't say twitching. I would say she was staying in her box, obviously, way more than she would come out in the morning, to grab some heat, but then she would be back in the box pretty much the rest of the day. And again, I told you she was obviously getting thicker, which, and we were cautiously optimistic at that point. Yeah. But then then it got to the point where she was uncomfortable and she was moving around more. I would see her come into the box, go out of the box, but not necessarily go to the heat, but just kind of repositioning herself within that egg laying box that I'd given her hive box.
Do you recall like the temperature of her basking area?
The basking area was probably, and again, we didn't have a lot of information at the time, so we set it up to 88 to 90 for the basking area. I would say the ambient temps, since it was in my basement, probably were in the mid 70s to 80s.
Did any of that stuff change? Well, did you maintain how do I say? Okay, because obviously you were in a cycle. Did you change any of your heating during that cycle while she was obviously becoming gravid, or did you leave everything the same and just leave it and let her decide what she wanted to do?
The only thing that I did when, so obviously when you're breeding pythons, you've got a cool down, a warm up, and then back to stasis that they would normally have. So, and I did that. So I did raise the temperatures from the basking spot, as well as I tried. I could only control my room temperature so much at the time where I was, but I did try to raise the room temperature up a little bit towards the end of what I considered was the warm up cycle.
Okay.
But I would say where she was, because it was a 6-foot cage, and her egg box was sort of like on the non-heated side, and I would hazard a guess that it probably didn't get much hotter than 82 degrees on her side at any given time during the day.
Okay.
So it was cool over there.
Okay. Yeah, and then she's under the box too, so probably lose a couple degrees, in there. So she was doing what she wanted. So that's awesome. And really informative as far as during that cycle. Did you guys ever see this blood smear situation where and what's your thoughts on that, if you have any thoughts on it at all? I mean, I've seen it with several people working with them that have produced, but I've also seen people that have produced that haven't seen it, and I'm just curious.
We didn't have it.
Okay, what are your thoughts on it? Do you have any ideas on it at all, or what
to be honest with you, it's not something I'm really familiar with. I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar with it. So there was an interesting sort of development leading up to laying the clutch.
Okay.
So she dropped 2 infertile eggs, and I don't know why I remember this, but it was in my head. 11 days before she actually laid the rest of the clutch.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, and we were freaking out. I'll be honest. Frank's like, "What do you mean she laid 2 eggs?" I said, "Dude, there's 2 slugs in here, and then now she stopped. Nothing else has happened." I said, "We didn't know what to do. Do we intervene?
Yeah.
The first thing you're thinking is, oh my God, she's egg bound.
Yeah,
she's not going to lay anything else." So we discussed it and said, "We're gonna leave her alone.
Good for you."
We're just gonna, we'll give it a couple weeks, before we start to panic and intervene, which could fuck up the whole process. In my mind, that's what I was thinking. Just leave her be.
Yeah, exactly.
And he agreed. And did you pull the infertile eggs from her? I did.
Okay. Did she push them out of the coil, or did she coil them when she deposited them?
They were pushed in the corner.
Cool.
So I just reached in, grabbed them. The one thing that I have been amazed about when I worked with these animals, being that they were wild caught, they were dog tame. They didn't, and I guess tame would be the wrong word, but they were just so not interested in being defensive or
it's a weird thing, isn't it? It's so strange.
Yeah, it was very bizarre. And so I could just reach in, and she just kind of like turned her head to the side to look at me. I grabbed the eggs, and she was like, "That's one less thing I got to deal with, I guess."
Yeah, right. She's like, "Thanks."
Yeah, and then 11 days later, she laid the clutch.
That's fantastic. And now, how many? I can't remember exactly, but how many eggs did she finally end up depositing?
I believe it was 12.
12 eggs.
Yes.
Awesome. And now when you guys collected the eggs from her and obviously artificially incubated them, was how long did it take her to kind of go back into that I'm back to normal kind of mode after having eggs?
So when I pulled the eggs, I took her out of her lay box, washed the lay box to get the scent out.
Nice.
And when I put it back in, she went back into the lay box and hung out there for a few days.
Cool.
I think I offered food after about a week, and she took it immediately.
Nice. Okay.
So that was how we did that for her. We just wanted her. We wanted her back on feed as soon as possible.
Yeah, of course. And that's a really, I really love how you brought up that the egg box washing. That's such an old school thing.
It is,
and it's so like spot on. And could you please tell people why you rinsed or cleaned the egg box after she laid eggs?
I cleaned the egg box out to remove the scent of the eggs being in her immediate environment.
Yes.
So, and my thought process there is, if you remove the eggs, remove the egg scent, clean the box out, put new material back in it, it turns that switch off in her brain that says, I'm supposed to be incubating something at this point. Not that I don't know how foolproof that is. I don't know. I'm not in her brain, but it was something else to relieve the stress that she was under having just laid the eggs. So, and again, it was just, that was a thought process. It's not fact. It's not scientific.
No, it's such a good thought process too. Cause it's all those little tiny details right there that I love capturing and, having people realize is like, oh, wow, that's monumental. And it's like, no, it's basic process of like, it's like, okay, you're going to have an animal that's going to be doing this, and you're going to slightly change the scenario a little bit to cause her, the eggs aren't in there, so she can't have that tactile touch, and the smells are gone too. So now it's allowing that animal to go back to its normal behavior without any kind of jolt in any change of like, hey, where are my eggs at? It's panic. This guy's got this big rat. He's trying to feed me. It's like, oh no, the eggs are gone. I mean, I'm good.
Again, we had, because it was the time and you had so little information.
Yeah.
So you were just kind of using your brain to think of logical scenarios, to put towards that animal. And, that was just, to me, it was just the logical thing to do to try to kind of reset her thought process, if you can call it that. Just to see whether or not she would react favorably to it, which she did. She went right back to her normal routine after that.
Perfect.
And, because like you said, I've bred other pythons, and I can't say that I did that for every single python that's laid eggs for me. And I did notice a difference that when you clean out their box, it does seem to reset their wiring.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. I agree. It's nice to hear that.
So
it's nice to hear that.
We did leave her with the eggs for a day or so. We did get to witness the twitching, the thermoregulation of the eggs, and her doing her natural behavior, keeping the eggs at a temperature that she wanted them to be. That which was neat to see an animal of that size. Yeah. That coloration doing that natural process. It was really neat.
That's super cool. What when you started? So when you took the eggs, and you put them in your artificial incubation setup, do you remember what the temperatures and humidity were that you set them at?
The humidity was as close to 100% as we could get it. Okay. And this is where the big fail was. And again, it was sort of, not being prepared, and not having, the equipment that we have today.
Yeah.
It was a makeshift incubator. I don't think I got enough airflow going to keep the heat, as
Okay.
The same all the way around the incubator box that we were using. So the eggs were at 88. That's what the probe was set to, because that was just everybody's default temperature for python eggs at the time. Yeah. So the hatch rate was dismal. We hatched 3 of them.
Okay.
And that was user error. And and I think it's important to say that, because
it's not it's how we progress further. It's how we learn.
Yes.
That's how, by not sharing critical information like that, it does absolutely zero help for us to achieve success down the road, especially with not just with, more difficult species like Boelens, but like anything, and these are, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm embarrassed about it. It's like, don't be embarrassed. It was a mistake. That's how we learn, we also learn different things,
Yeah. We, at the time we were both we bit off more than we could chew to even start this whole project. We weren't, experience wise, we weren't, where we needed to be doing something of that caliber of animal. Yeah. We just jumped in. Yeah. But yes, it's important to let the failures speak as much as the successes, because that's how you learn.
Yes. Yes, that is true. That is very true. What did with the what was the incubation length? Do you remember?
It was spot on, like 62 days.
Nice. And when the babies came out, do you remember what the sex ratio was that you had?
2.1.
Oh, okay, cool. Did when did you start offering food and all that stuff with them?
So we started offering food after the first shed, and the first shed for those animals, again, and it was our ignorance as to how, at the time there was literally no information about raising baby Boelens pythons from scratch. So the first shed on all 3 snakes was rough. Okay. And it for lack of a better term, it looked like they were wrapped up in crinkled saran wrap. Okay. Even with the humidity that we thought was adequate, I mean, there was condensation. It took them a while to shed, and all 3 of them needed help soaking and getting this. But once they shed, they were fine.
Awesome. And was there any other shedding issues down the road afterwards, or no?
No.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was just that first shed. And they ate probably within a week or 2 after that first shed.
When you offered food, was it just like small rodents? Did you do quail? Did you do anything like that?
It was pinkies.
Nice. Mice. Awesome. Very cool. Because I know a lot of people, talk about how they've had issues with getting neonates to feed and stuff like that. I've never had a problem myself, so I'm always curious. Whatchamacallit, on people if they have problems like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you produce a ton of animals, you're going to have problem feeders.
Yeah.
And there's a host of different methods that I use to get problem feeders going. Temperature, different types of food items, different hide boxes for them, even putting them in a paper lunch bag.
Yeah,
with the prey item, and then like you said, quail seems to be cracked for most Morelia species.
Yeah.
So if all else fails, there's quail. So, but yeah, you use a bunch of different methods. But I honestly, I think some snakes you just wait them out until they feed. Other snakes, you do have to start look at how you're keeping them. Are your temperatures too high?
Yeah.
Are they too low? Do they have an adequate hide spot? They need to feel safe. Is the substrate you're using, right for that particular species? There's so many variables that go into getting the snakes to feed. And then you have the ones that basically will feed right out of the egg. So it's trial and error. it's also as best you can sort of adapting per animal as best you can. Each animal's different, and I don't think people realize that. There's some, like I said, will eat right eggs. Some of them won't. Some of them take a month. Some of them take 2 months to eat.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. You said that because it's like it goes back to like how we were talking about earlier about where it's like you've got to really learn your animals, pay attention to behavior, and just because the animal doesn't want to feed, like you were starting to get on, doesn't mean there's something health related wrong to it.
No.
And a lot of times that's the situation. There isn't anything wrong health wise. It's something. Some kind of temperature or something like that, an issue like that. And it goes back to just like, okay, instead of freaking out and stressing the animal out, I'm going to go back over all the bases. And we're going to look at everything one by one and saying, hey, is this right? Or should I manipulate this just a little bit and see if this works out?
There's no one hard, fast rule that you can just kind of throw a blanket over and it's going to work for everybody. You have to, sometimes you have to take the time and crack the individual code.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Every animal's different. So, you know as well as anybody, we keep our snakes, baby snakes especially, in racks.
Yeah.
So there's only so much we can do per animal, but you can rearrange their environment.
Yeah, and racks aren't bad. I don't think racks are bad. I think they
racks
offer
great for babies.
Yeah,
and
they offer
it gives them security.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. They offer that security. It's dark. It's quiet. The animals feel comfortable. The door opens, water comes in, food comes in, closes the door. You're good. There's no stress. And a lot of people will harp on racks and stuff. I mean, I have my own views on like once you start getting to really larger snake species, obviously it might not work the best. However, everybody it works, however you keep your animals works for you as long as the animals are healthy. Was there anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just going to say, I like enclosures for bigger animals.
Yeah.
And, I try to provide, that for when the animal's to a certain size. But I've had people, buy animals for me. My animal's coming from a rack system, literally right behind me.
Yeah.
And then and they asked me, well, would they be good in a 20-gallon long with all the accoutrements that go along with it? I said, honestly, I wouldn't. I would try to give them something smaller than that because they feel really safe in the racks. Yeah. But again, people do what they're going to do. And you can give them the best advice possible, and people are still going to do what they're going to do. But but for my stuff, baby racks, I think, are essential.
Yeah, I agree. It provides a lot of really beneficial situational stuff.
I agree. Yeah, that's just my thought process.
No, I think it's good. I think it's now. So out of all the everything encompassing your bull and I work and everything like that, was there anything interesting that as we start wrapping this up that you would like to point out or share with people that are listening about the species or anything in particular that you feel is beneficial to share?
I mean, just off the top of my head, it's a magnificent species. They are, as far as the python world goes, I think they're right at the top tier of the python species that are out there. I think they're still not fully understood clearly. I think there's so much more work that needs to be done, and I think we touched on some of them. I think there's atmospheric work we need to look at. There's wild feeding regimen that we need to somehow figure out what they're feeding on, when they're feeding, and which is virtually impossible without doing years long field study with trail cameras and things like that set up to try to catch that. But there's just so much more work that needs to be done, and I know they're cost prohibitive for most people, and that is a thing because it seems like in our hobby, when we've established new species in our hobby, the real information comes out when we get that species into as many hands as possible.
I agree.
The more people working with them, the more information that gets collected, and the more information that gets disseminated out, and amongst the people who are working with them, so everybody can start working on fine tuning and dialing in what works best for that particular species. And we're just not there yet with these animals.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I think, obviously the monetary side of everything really affects a lot, because there's a lot of really great young, fresh mind herpetoculturists that are coming into the scene.
I agree.
And, it's like they might just key in on something that us old schoolers didn't even think about, and it's just the animals are out of their reach because they can't afford to get these. So
I agree 100%. And, hopefully down the road that becomes less of an issue. And you can get these snakes into a ton of people's hands.
Yeah.
We want that. You want as many people working with them as possible. You want as much genetic diversity as we can get, when breeding back the animals. And the information that gets collected is invaluable. Everybody's going to have their own experience. Everybody's going to have their own way of doing things in different parts of the country with different weather patterns, different atmospheric patterns, different barometric pressures. We need all that.
Yeah.
We need all that information to kind of help get the information to where it does become like just breeding your carpet python every year.
It's critical data that we need,
Yes.
That's what it is. So,
I agree.
And with that being said, I thank you so much, Jason, for coming on. I've been trying to get this interview for a while, and we've been playing tag and all this and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
It's crazy, but I'm really glad we got to sit down and talk and get all this information recorded, so that way we can go back over it. It's there for people to enjoy, as well as take a lot of information out of it to help them out, because that's what we're doing this for.
Yes.
How do people follow you if they want to keep up with what you're doing, Jason?
I'm on Facebook. East Coast Serpents is my Facebook page, but reach out to me, via Messenger, however you like. But any way is possible for you to get a hold of me. Just Google me. I'm out there. So, and thank you so much for having me. This was fantastic. I enjoyed it.
And I hope to see you again at Bill's party again, and we can talk more.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the fun part, is like, there's never an end to snake discussion. That's the thing. It's just we that's what we do. We talk about snakes. No,
that's how all the information gets passed to each other.
Exactly.
When we sit down at a table with a drink, a cigar, whatever, and just talk about it, and that's where all the revelations happen.
That's right. So with that being said, thank you again. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you guys for tuning in. Like, share, follow, whatever it is you guys do. Thank you, the Trap Talk Reptile Network. Don't forget to like, follow, share, as well as the Boelens Python Roundtable and Project Black Python. And I will see you guys next time. Have a great day or night or whatever it is.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for following. If you're looking for other ways to learn about Boelens pythons, please feel free to follow me on projectblackpython.org, Project Black Python on Instagram, and of course, the Boelens Python Roundtable. If you're looking at ways to help out with my research and project, I've set up a donation account through PayPal, boelenspythonconservation@gmail.com, link below, which will allow you to send donations. All donations are used to purchase new field equipment, help with logistics, as well as help support these local communities that I've been working with for years. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you on the next episode.